Watch Euronews live, anytime, anywhere, on euronews.com and the Euronews app.
Live from the European Parliament in Strasbourg, this is Raw Politics. Thank you for joining us this evening, and this is what we have on the program for you. Top job cliffhanger. Will Ursula von der Leyen be the next Commission President? We'll have live coverage of tonight's vote. The Great Divide, why the former German Defense Minister has the European Parliament split. Up close and personal. We speak to von der Leyen's former colleague about what she's really like. Not dead yet. EU leaders try to save the Iran nuclear deal, but are they downplaying the risks? And Farage snubbed von der Leyen's fiery comeback to the Brexit party leader in tonight's Raw Moments. It is time to meet our panelists this evening. We have joining us Adina Valian. She's a Romanian MEP from the European People's Party. So, Adina, everybody's watching the vote tonight. But which of this political drama, we can call it, are you watching very closely?
Well, to be honest, I was very interested in getting to know Ursula von der Leyen because she's not someone us in the Brussels political environment are very acquainted with. We haven't seen her much.
A lot of people do want to know a lot more about her.
It was very interesting to listen to her, right. And of course we need to see the success of her tonight. These two things are the most important.
Something we'll be waiting and seeing. Okay, and joining us as well is James Crisp. He's a Brussels correspondent for the Telegraph newspaper. Good to see you again, James. What about you?
Hello, I'm looking forward to seeing just exactly how many MEPs have decided to go completely against their resolution to block any non-Spitzenkandidat.
So you want to see the number again?
I want to see how many of them are craven, lying cowards.
Okay, well, this is the big story tonight, so that's exactly where we are beginning. It all comes down to tonight's vote. After marathon summits and weeks of horse trading, European leaders decided to ditch the Spitzenkandidat process and put forward their own choice for Commission President. That's German Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen. Now, it is up to the members of the European Parliament to decide her fate, and they will be deciding that inside the hemicycle. You're looking now at a live shot of what is going on. You can see the MEPs entering that hemicycle where that decision will be made, and they're about to cast their secret ballot for or against von der Leyen's nomination. So again, just to remind you, you're looking at the live shot there that's happening right now behind us, actually. It is the culmination of a week-long Brussels charm offensive. Long days of wheeling and dealing, making pledges on rule of law and climate change and a whole host of other issues. And in a final attempt to woo MEPs, she gave a speech in Strasbourg today setting out her vision for the next 5 years. Let's take a listen.
First climate neutral continent in the world by 2050. I will put forward a Green Deal for Europe in my first 100 days in office. I will put forward the first ever European climate law, which will set the 2050 target in law. There can be no compromise when it comes to respecting the rule of law. There never will be. I fully support an EU-wide rule of law mechanism. The European Union needs humane borders. We must save. But saving alone is not enough. I will propose a new pact on migration and asylum, including the relaunch of the Dublin reform. I cannot talk about Europe without talking about our friends from the United Kingdom. I stand ready for a further extension of the withdrawal date, should more time be required for a good reason.
So you can hear some reaction there in the plenary hall this morning. So let's take a look at how some of the group leaders reacted to that speech.
Ursula von der Leyen ist eine Christdemokratin. Sie ist eine überzeugte Europäerin, und deshalb werden wir mit ihr gemeinsam unsere Wahlversprechen umsetzen. Die Europäische Volkspartei wird Ursula von der Leyen heute geschlossen unterstützen und wählen.
Estamos aquí para escucharla. No queremos una crisis institucional que retrase más los cambios que Europa necesita, pero necesitamos garantías de que en los próximos años Europa será capaz de afrontar las medidas necesarias.
Là où un changement de cap s'impose à la mesure de la triple urgence sociale, environnementale et démocratique, vous proposez ici une inflexion là des changements incrémentaux et surtout beaucoup de flou. Vous comprendrez que dans ces conditions, les écologistes ne soient pas prêts aujourd'hui à vous confier le gouvernail de l'Union.
All right, well, let's check in with our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who is just outside the Parliament chamber for us. Okay, so Darren, what can we expect from that vote tonight?
Well, as you say, Tessa, MEPs are now filing into the chamber, ready to cast their votes. It is a secret ballot. We may not find out how many of them voted, but how it's shaking up at the moment, I think, is that most MEPs you talk to seem to reckon that she will get over the line. It's going to be close, but in saying that, no one's absolutely certain she will. So it's been quite a tense afternoon with the EPP and Renew Europe coming out and saying that, of course, they will back her. So will most of the Socialists, but not all, while the Greens, the ECR and others saying that they will vote against, along people like the Brexit Party. So whatever ends up happening tonight, it's going to be close. So let's have a look at the numbers Ursula von der Leyen needs to get to become the first female Commission President. Ursula von der Leyen has to get the backing of an absolute majority of MEPs. The figure etched in her mind tonight is 374, a tricky task. Her EPP will back her with its 182 votes, so she needs roughly the same again from the other parties combined. The problem is the Greens and the far left have already turned their backs, leaving Ms von der Leyen reliant on backers in the Socialist and Liberal parties. And right-wing and populist groups, a poison kiss down the line, some suggest. But it's not just about making it to 374. Symbolically, the backing of fewer than 400 MEPs could undermine her authority in office. Back in 2014, Jean-Claude Juncker got 422. So will Ursula von der Leyen be able to match her predecessor? Will she even make it across the line? So what happens if she doesn't get over that line? Well, first of all, she would make history as the first nominee to be rejected by this Parliament. But also, it would essentially do a lot of reputational damage to the EU institutions and really push it into a summer of crisis in many regards, because EU leaders would then have 30 days to come up with another name to put forward for Parliament to vote on. Who would that be? What name would come forward? And I think ultimately, Tessa, that might be what weighs heaviest on MEPs as they begin voting this evening. Ultimately, do they really want to scrap this? Do they really want to start again, go back to the drawing board, and then end up with who? What is the alternative? Would it be better than Ursula von der Leyen?
All right, thanks for that, Darren. For the moment, okay, Adina, I'll go to you. You're from the same party as Ms. von der Leyen from the European People's Party. You've gotten to know her, the group has gotten to know her, but you know the idea is that everybody will get in line. But can you honestly tell us that the EPP will back Ms. von der Leyen, knowing that this is a secret ballot?
Well, I think EPP is going to back her. We
had
the discussion.
Resistance.
It's not a resistance. It's a bit, we were taken by surprise it is a bit uncharted territory here, because we were all expecting to have the Spitzenkandidat process going smoothly. And the opposition we had in the council from some leaders, not from all, to the process. And the wrong interpretation that anyone who was declaring himself as Spitzenkandidat might be the president of the commission.
So
to
some
see
people
Mr.
are still upset
Timmermans,
by
this
that.
is a bit weird, and we were insisting for a long time already to have Manfred Weber, who was our Spitzenkandidat, and since we took the larger number of votes, to have him as a proposal made by the Council and supported by the Parliament. But as I said, uncharted territory, so now we have another proposal. It is still an EPP President of the Commission, and we are determined to support her. Of course, it's a secret ballot, because it always
Sure,
was a
yeah, it's a secret ballot.
so
We can
that's
never
it.
actually be sure. And go ahead, James.
The EPP voted for the resolution in 2017, a European Parliament resolution saying we will reject any non-Spitzenkandidat candidate. And I mean, look, I think it's pretty obvious the EPP made a big mistake in selecting Manfred Weber
Well,
as
that's
lead
her
candidate.
opinion.
Well, I mean, it's not just mine. It also turned out to be the opinion of almost all of the leaders of the European Union.
Yeah, well,
but,
some of the leaders. Let's
So how dangerous is it that she might not get the backing of the EPP? And you were talking about the numbers earlier.
She'll get the
as well.
backing because the EPP will do what it's told, like all the other MEPs.
So, but what about the importance of the numbers? You were saying you want to know exactly the
No,
numbers.
I want
Why
to
is
know.
that important?
Well, because I want to know how many people have said, yeah, you know that resolution that we said we were going to stick to. How many of them have basically betrayed that?
You know what? It's interesting. For example, from the things she said today, she said, I would like to give more legislative power to the parliament. So when we put something in a resolution, then the commission under her...
that went down well.
I mean, her speech was just full of stuff which will never get through council.
I was thinking at this when you were talking, because, you know, in many situations, we are proposing resolutions, we are voting on them, and sometimes the council disregards them, or even the commission. So, according to the treaty, we are stuck here.
Can I just say one thing? But why would the council take a resolution from a European Parliament seriously now, when you've gone back on the resolution about the Spitzenkandidat?
I know what you're saying, and this is raw politics, because it's true that the Parliament could have just per se send a message to the council, but we are not doing actually politics. You were saying at the beginning that this will be a very tormenting time if for a crisis interinstitutional, and we are not sure that this is a good message to send to people, that the institution cannot agree on starting actually the work for the next parliament.
In terms of what she has said, didn't mention anything about what's going on in Germany. You know, she's facing a lot of criticism there. Does it matter to the EPP, to her own party, that she's not talking about the investigations that's going on as in her ministry, defense ministry in Germany?
I think she referred to that because we had a discussion even on this in the EPP. She was asked. She honestly answered to this in a satisfactory way for us. And I know it was reported, but to be honest, she's not herself under the investigation, but it's the Ministry of Defense under her. So,
I think
it's a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the sort of interesting things is when you listen to her speech, is it didn't sound like an EPP speech. It actually sounded quite left-wing, quite green. And I wonder, actually, in this secret ballot, how many of the right wing of the EPP will go, minimum wage for everyone, carbon emissions of 50%, 55%. I think that's a good idea, but I don't think many people in your party do.
So who was the target audience for that speech?
I was the chair of the Environment Committee, and I can tell you that there was a majority in this House to move towards carbon neutrality for 2050. So I think she's just reflecting.
Emissions will get to 55%? No chance.
This was lower.
She did touch on all those policies. So of course we wanted to know what everybody's thinking here at the Parliament. So we did ask MEPs what they thought about von der Leyen's performance earlier. So let's take a listen to that.
The speech that Ms. von der Leyen made was very good. It was very pro-European, so it was surprisingly good after we had the hearings of the last week, which was very disappointing. Today we got a good speech, but what is missing is concrete proposals in all of the areas that are important for us.
She was more EU radical than I have ever heard anyone speaking here. Of course, it's clear that she is flat on the floor for the left wing, for the left side of the parliament, and for the radical pro-EU agenda of the left. And so this is no good.
I think Ursula von der Leyen did a very good job. She was putting a lot of topics on the table that have been asked by different political groups. Migration, climate, internal market, our global role as European Union, and our need to unite internally again.
Well, comparably with last week, not so nice, I would say. So last week she visited us, a European Conservative Reformist group, and we had a very excellent discussions. I think it was more positive outcome from my colleagues and myself. Today and also yesterday, when we have seen the letters from Ursula von der Leyen to socialists and so-called liberals, it was a totally different direction, and I think it's a disappointment.
All right, so joining us for this part of the panel, we have Brian McGuire, a reporter and broadcaster for Euractiv, and also joining us, Teresa Kuckler from Svenska Dagbladet, a Danish paper. All right, let's talk about Swedish, excuse me. So what about we're talking about the MEPs there, talking about the left-right divide. It was, you know, we can argue that the left and right has changed or shifted, but then was she, in the beginning, she was too right for the left, and now she's too left for the right. What is going on here? Who was her real audience today?
Her real audience, this is where she's going to fall down because she's trying to please everybody and not pleasing anybody quite enough. I was at some of the press conferences with some of the group leaders a few moments ago. The Greens in particular, lots of nice speech but no concrete actions. That's what they were saying. Von der Leyen really tried to bring in the Green agenda, tried to make this work for them, but they're not really buying it in any great way right now.
Will that cause any problems? You know, she was talking about migration, burden sharing policy, the green policy, education, minimum wage, employment, women's rights. All these sound great for the socialists. Will this create a bit of, create enemies on the other side?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of theatrics around these votings. I think the EPP is going to support the woman regardless.
Okay.
I think the one thing that actually pleased everyone, because you said that she failed on pleasing, but one thing that pleased everyone is that she seemed to want to engage more in the European Parliament, more than Jean-Claude Juncker. I've talked to an MEP here today, said, well, with Jean-Claude Juncker, we wrote letters all the time. He never replied. And every time we suggested something, he just said, no, we don't want regulation. And this time she has told everyone, I want to see you on a regular basis. I will listen to you. I will answer to your letters. I will take on your initiatives on legislation, and I think that pleased the whole crowd.
Will she? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Ryan.
Which is great, but can she deliver? The question is, can she deliver? And the Parliament is at its absolute weakest right now. The majority of the MEPs here have no clue how this process works. They're doing as they're told by the group leaders. The group leaders, most of them are new to their roles as well. They don't have full control over their groups yet either. Von der Leyen today is promising a wish list, a Christmas list of things she can't actually deliver. And the wiser heads in here know that. So let's see if she can.
So what's your feeling? What's your guess? Will she make it through
I think she'll make it, but just about.
Just about, okay. And
I think she will make it, and it's because people don't want to drag it out any longer. And then also, who else is going to be? They're going to take a new name out of a hat?
There are three good names in there already.
Are they good? I think
that action is already starting. If we could just go to that live shot inside the hemicycle, because the MEPs are now inside casting their secret ballot. I think this is really interesting that it's a secret ballot, because then we'll never really know who voted for what. So there they are. The action is starting. This is where the decision will be made, and we'll be finding out tonight whether or not Ursula von der Leyen has just made it through that 374 threshold. How important is this number? I mean, because in terms of a mandate. In terms of how she can
I don't think it'll matter on that. I know there's a lot of talk about she'll win with the support of the far right, but like you say, it's a secret vote. How on earth are you going to know? She will probably make it through, and some of those that promised that they would vote for her won't, and others will do it because, like Theresa said, they just don't want this to drag on. But we really don't know, and this House was furious when the Council acted the way it did, and I wonder if enough of that fury resides still within in the voting booths today.
So you were talking about support of the far right, and there's been a lot of reaction on it's not good for her starting this with the support of the far right. Again, we'll never know. But is she the kind of commission head, if she does get this, that will be bridging the gap between those extremes? At this,
she can't.
She can't. So you don't think she's the one that
also,
can bring everybody
remember,
together?
This is not like a national parliament where there's an opposition and a leadership. There's always one against the other. Here you have, depending on the issue at stake, you have new alliances around every new issue, I'd say. So it's not really clear who she has to bridge over or persuade for each and every topic.
Well, let's look at the subjects. Migration. Can she satisfy the Greens and the Social Democrats and the far right?
No.
That's near impossible. Can she satisfy the centre when it comes to unemployment insurance? Maybe. Can she satisfy on the Green Deal? Well, try and persuade Poland to go along with reduction in coal subsidies faster than they've already been asked to. So
what does that mean? Can she get anything done is the question.
That's a good question.
She get anything
done? Like any head of any commission, or this commission, she can suggest, but at the end of the day, member states are the ones to, say yes or no, and Parliament.
So of all those sweeteners that were proposed today, I wonder which ones will actually happen. All right, we have a lot more coming up on Raw Politics for you. We've heard how politicians feel about von der Leyen, but what about you? So our social team is tracking reaction to the vote online tonight. So that vote, again, as you were saying, is happening inside the hemicycle. There you go. MEPs lining up to cast their secret ballot. We'll be checking in with what's happening in the hemicycle throughout the show tonight. Do stay with us.
I tried to channel that feeling of California into my music, and I felt like with the name Best Coast, people will always kind of feel that California vibe. so many different places inspire my lyrics because you're surrounded by such beauty. LA makes you really feel like alive. That's just something that I haven't been able to find anywhere else I've ever been.
Angola is rich. We have an abundance of beautiful, untouched and fertile land. Papaya, passion fruit, bananas, corn, peanuts and coffee. Everything under the sun grows here. We are prepared to share our delicious products with the whole world. Angola is now.
Raw Politics coming up shortly on Euronews.
Air quality forecast in collaboration with Copernicus.
Welcome back to Raw Politics. So tonight we are watching closely what's happening behind that wooden dome there where MEPs are casting their secret ballot on whether or not to confirm Ursula von der Leyen for the European Commission top job. All right, let's check in with our political editor again. Darren McCaffrey is just outside that chamber with the co-chair of the Greens party, Philippe Lambert. Darren.
Yeah, hello, Tess. As you say, voting is on the way. MEPs literally queuing up to vote. And it must be said, actually, in the last couple of minutes it's been revealed that the Law and Justice Party in Poland are going to back Ursula von der Leyen in this vote. Apparently follows a phone call from Angela Merkel last night. We believe also the Five Star Movement are going to back her. Is it going to be enough to get her over the line? Well, one party that is not, as you say, is the Green Party. And as you also said, I'm joined by Philippe Lambert, who is their, one of the co-leaders. First of all, she is the first female nominee. Sure. She spent a lot of her speech talking about green issues. She is avidly pro-European. Why are you voting against her?
Because she decided to build her coalition without us. That was obvious. She came to our group last week. It was an utter disaster. Not a single concrete word on anything, and when it was a bit concrete, she said stuff that we couldn't agree with, such as on the precautionary principle. So now she transformed into something else today. But then again, who is the Ursula von der Leyen? I mean, if I came to you last week saying that actually I don't care about gender equality, and this week I'm coming to you saying this is the most important issue in the world, you would question my credibility, right? Wouldn't you? Well, she now speaks words about the climate, but when you scratch beneath the surface, you find that most of the stuff that she says is fuzzy. And therefore, okay, well, if that is what she wants to commit, we'll judge her on what comes out of the box. So a speech is a nice thing. She has a majority. I mean, with the three political groups that made the arrangements, between them they have 444 votes, so they don't need us. And we will vote in favour or against each proposal coming from the Commission according to its merits.
But isn't that the point, though, is that actually after all of this, after the green wave that people talked about, the fact that you've increased your number of MEPs, at the end of this process, if she wins tonight, you guys have lost out. You've lost out in your influence, you've got none of the top jobs. Isn't that the honest political reality of where we are tonight?
You say so. Well, I mean, the three other political families decided to exclude us from all the top jobs. Why? I mean, why? Because then there's less to distribute. The Spanish Prime Minister once called me And when I told him, well, you know, if there's an agreement with 4 political families around the program, there must be an agreement about between the 4 on the distribution of positions of responsibility. His answer was, well, you can't ask that from us because, you know, it's already so complex with 3 around the table. With 4, it would be impossible. So you Greens, please be happy to sit at the end of the table and wait for your turn to speak and then deliver all your votes. Sorry, this is not a way to take the Green Wave seriously.
You seem quite angry about it.
Well, it's a matter of respect. And I mean, all the voters who voted for the Greens want the Greens to be respected. And of course, to play a constructive role, which is what we did from day one after the election. We tried to forge a coalition for change in this House. But they consciously decided to exclude us because it was easier to distribute positions among 3 than with a 4th around the table.
Philip Ronvers, thank you very much indeed for joining us. There you go, rather frustrated, must be said, co-leader of the Green Party tonight. As I say, voting is carrying on. We're expecting a result, I think, around 7:30, 8 p.m, we think. Back to you, Tessa.
All right, thank you for that, Darren and Philippe Lambert there. And joining us for this panel, we have Katalin Stes. He's a Hungarian MEP from the Renew Party. We also have Christoph Hansen. He's a Luxembourgish MEP from the EPP. All right, so we can see Philippe Lambert there, clearly very angry. The Greens not happy with Ursula von der Leyen. What about you, Katalin? You had some doubts in the beginning, so what changed?
Well,
and how did you vote also?
I'm still yet to vote.
Oh, yet to vote. Okay, well,
queue.
thanks for being here in the meantime.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, I had my doubts after her hearing at our group 2 weeks ago. But I think she very pleasantly surprised all of us during her speech at the plenary. She had very concrete suggestions, for instance, on climate, or for instance, on reform in the Spitzenkandidat system. I would like to see a stronger stance on the rule of law. She said very nice words about sharing principles, but I would need more harsh mechanisms for her to actually enforce
So you're not
them.
satisfied on the rule of law point?
Yes, I have my concerns, but I think overall she had a very satisfactory performance and she listened to our feedback.
And do you think the Liberals feel this way, the Renew group, or you can say that there are some doubts as well within the group?
I think that the Renew group is very positive about von der Leyen taking our suggestions on board and very much improving her principles on concrete steps in many areas.
And what about you, Christoph? I mean, you're from the same party. Are we expecting just you to say, okay, we're backing her? Is this the line from the EPP?
We are definitely backing her, but we are not backing the principle and the system, how we came to her candidacy, because for us definitely the Spitzenkandidaten system was the one we wanted. We wanted voters to vote for.
So why back her if there's such a big problem? And the EPP said that they wouldn't back a non-Spitzenkandidat. So why back?
There was a plan A that has been rejected in council, that has been rejected here in parliament, not in a vote, but in the political groups. Now we are at plan B. What plan C could we get? Would we get back in plan C anything else? Would we get back the Spitzenkandidat? That's not the case. That's why this is the best we can get. But we got a confirmation from her that she will hammer in stone the Spitzenkandidaten system for the next elections. We take that very serious. And then something that I didn't like so much was definitely her talking about the extension of a Brexit over longer than the 31st of October. That would definitely be the scariest scenario.
For her Brexit.
The scariest Halloween we could get.
Well, there you go. So what is your reaction to what he's saying about her plan for Brexit? Let's just quickly touch on that topic.
Well, I'm personally very much for extending the deadline and very much for working against a hard Brexit, giving chance for those, for instance, in my group, who represent a great part of the British population who actually want to remain in the Union. We have a very strong Lib Dem delegation, and they prove that a strong anti-Brexit campaign is very popular back home. So I think we have to give them the chance.
And just very quickly, because neither of you are socialists, do you think that her audience today was really the socialist group trying to win the left at least?
Well, she had a very progressive
Her biggest
agenda.
critic are the German socialists as well.
She had a very progressive agenda, and I'm personally very happy about that.
Okay, and what about you? Do you think her audience was...
Her audience, definitely, her speech was towards the left of the parliament. That was very clear. That's where she would need support. But on the Green side, she will not get any support. The socialists, there will be about 40-50 people voting definitely against her. So it will be a very tight game.
Have you cast your ballot?
It is already done.
You have. Okay, so now let's check in with the MEPs who are inside lining up to cast that secret ballot. This is what is going on. So there you go, lining up for or against Ursula von der Leyen. We'll find out tonight whether she will make it through as the new president of the European Commission and the first woman in that position. Okay, so here we've been talking to politicians. We talk mainly about the professional side of von der Leyen, but what about the personal side? So earlier I spoke with a German publicist and TV journalist, Maria von Welser, who co-authored a book with von der Leyen on gender parity. So I began by asking her what it was like to work with Ursula von der Leyen.
It was great. She's always very committed to the thing she is. She knows exactly what she wants. She's straightforward and she's very warm-hearted.
All right, but you know, she's been facing a lot of criticism in Germany, and we see that. We've heard of all of the investigations going on there. How does she deal with challenges and hard times like that, especially outside of the public, in private? How does she deal with the criticism?
I just want to start with the good things she did in Germany. She was family minister and she did a lot of wonderful things for families, for children, for kindergarten, for parents, for fathers. This wasn't forgotten. But now as a minister for defense, she was the first minister of defense, a woman who worked 5 years in this job. The others had to leave very, very earlier. And it wasn't very successful. There was a lot of criticism about what she did, and I think she had a bad time there. She had perhaps not only the right words for these soldiers, and as I realized, I'm married to a soldier. They are all looking for a man on the top.
So as you say, this has been quite a difficult episode for her. So knowing what you know about her personality by working with her, what do you think are the challenges she's going to face here? You know, if she does get this position, such a diverse and very different kind of environment. What are the challenges you think she'll face?
For me, she's she's a feminist woman. She is a European woman. She speaks, as you know, fluently English, French, and German, naturally. She's born in Brussels. She lived in the United Kingdom, in London. She lived in America. She's an international person, and for my opinion, she would be a great person for this position, not only because she's a woman, she's very committed to the things she wanted to do, and she's always straightforward, and she can negotiate, and she can listen to other people. I'm sure, for example, in the Brexit situation, she would negotiate again with the Brits and perhaps find a better solution.
Okay, so you think she'll be able to find that compromise. Now, what do you think, what is something that you know that most people don't know about Ursula von der Leyen?
She is, as she told me when I was asking her, she's a family animal, she said, which means she is very committed to her 7 children. She, in the weekends, they don't grab the phone. They try to get all the friends away. They try to be together, and she's getting up at 5:30 in the morning, organizing herself, the children, the family, and she goes to work at 9 o'clock. This was a normal day here in Germany, and I was really impressed about how she organized everything what she had to do. This was, for my opinion, one of, perhaps for Europe as well, a very, very good commitment.
All right, just a very quick reaction to what was said there on the personal side of von der Leyen and how that would figure into her job if she gets it.
Well, somebody has to break the glass ceiling, and I would be personally very happy to see a female commissioner and the Gender Balance Commission.
All right, and Christoph?
For me, definitely it is not. I voted not in favor of her because she's a woman. I'm coming from a family with 7 children as well. I have 4 sisters. They would hit me if I say that I voted for her gender. I voted for her because of her competence, because of her the things she said today about climate change, her really strong points about rule of law she made. Right. That's the reason why I voted for her.
Okay, so we will have a lot more on that. We're watching the vote tonight closely on whether or not Ursula von der Leyen will become the next Commission president. Let's check in with what's happening inside. Our special coverage continues. MEPs lining up, casting their secret ballot. They're inside the hemicycle just behind us. Do stay with us for more of that coverage.
I was born and bred in Africa.
I schooled in Africa, and I've seen firsthand the level of poverty in Africa. This is the reason why our family in 2010 created the Tony Elumelu Foundation to help young African men and women to realize their life aspirations. To the young Africans, I say the future of Africa is indeed in your hands. I look forward to welcoming our entrepreneurs in Abuja between the 26th and 27th of July this year for the annual Tony Elumelu Foundation Entrepreneurship Forum, the largest gathering of African entrepreneurs.
Forge of Empires. Develop your own city from the Stone Age to the future. Available in the App Store and at FOE.tv. Play now.
Raw Politics coming up shortly on Euronews.
Welcome back to Raw Politics and to the Parliament here in Strasbourg. It's buzzing with activity, so that vote continues inside the hemicycle behind me. So our team in the Cube have been tracking reaction now from everywhere, following how it's been playing out on social media. So Alex, what are people saying?
Well, Tessa, it's a secret vote, but we're getting some indication from some very open MEPs like Martin Daubney of the Brexit Party, sharing this, an image of himself voting no. Unsurprising there, the Brexit Party voting no to Ursula von der Leyen. But also other people there like Alan Smith, he's a Scottish MEP, SNP, saying voting yes and giving you some of those pictures from a different perspective to the news cameras of the MEPs going off to go and vote there. We know that during voting, the S&D, the Socialists and Democrats, said our group's backing von der Leyen. We've seen the groups coming out and using social media today to voice their support. Not everybody, though. And I think it's fair to say the harshest comments seem to be coming from the Brexit Party in the UK. Look at this. This is Lewis Stebbin Bryce here saying, your two candidates to choose from, Ursula von der Leyen, the failed Defence Minister of Germany, or Ursula von der Leyen, the failed Defence Minister of Germany, in his words. So the Brexit Party going after the process. Seb Dance MEP, though, saying, actually, where else does this kind of intergovernmental body kind of oversight happen? Praising the process. So you've got a real sort of perspective there to and fro. But then when we look at the Greens, we've had some very strong indications from the Greens yesterday, even from Terry Reitke here, saying, when you have 1.5 hours to convince 47 pro-Europeans in the European Parliament to vote for you, and you offer nothing. So we got a sense that the Green no was long coming. But there are others, of course, like Guy Verhofstadt, now of the Reform Europe group, really praising Ursula von der Leyen. Let's not forget, Mr. Verhofstadt himself was one of these Spitzenkandidaten for the ALDE party, as it was then. But here, fully going behind Ursula von der Leyen, saying her speech won him over. Now, doesn't get a vote, but Donald Tusk, really strong tweet saying he's a fanatic for EU unity and he's got fanatical support for Ursula von der Leyen. Of course, using social media here in his position, probably to try and convince a few MEPs that while they might, some of them might hold their nose and vote for Ursula von der Leyen, as she wasn't a Spitzenkandidat, that she is the best bet for forming a reform, for bringing about a reformed Europe. And there has been a lot of debate, hasn't there, about whether she's now sounding more left-wing to appeal to the right and all sorts of things about exactly how she's pitching herself. But I think if I just want to end on one thing here, taking this evening and imagining you were Ursula von der Leyen, Sam Morgan having a bit of a joke with this, saying, me, myself and Ursula tonight, wait, do I even want this job? So you can imagine tense times for MEPs, but obviously a tense time for Ursula von der Leyen, and we await the results.
Thank you for that, Alex. Indeed, we are waiting. And in the meantime, with us in the studio, we have Miriam Dali. She's a Maltese MEP and Vice Chair of the Socialists and Democrats group. We also have Nathalie Loiseau. She's a French MEP from the Renew Party. Have you cast your votes? Have you already cast your ballot?
Yes.
Your secret ballot. Can it not be secret anymore? All right. Miriam, tell us about were you happy with von der Leyen's performance, and did you back her?
I was a skeptic until a week ago, because this was a candidate we heard barely anything about. This was not part of the Spitzenkandidat process that the SD was pushing for. And we needed to understand what she stands for and what her values are. And I have to be honest with you, we had a hearing last week in the group. It wasn't the best hearing ever. We asked for written commitments. We got those written commitments. We saw the guiding principles that she intends to work on. The majority of our group decided to vote in favor.
Do you think her audience was the socialists, in fact, especially the critics today in her speech? And do you think she's gone a bit too left for the right, as some would say?
I have to be honest with you, when you look at what she spoke about this morning and at what was written in the letter, there are a lot of things we demanded and we asked for. It's not perfect. Like, for example, the target for 2030, we are still pushing for a 55% 2030 target. This morning she mentioned 50% and she would like to move towards the 55%, but we want to remain vigilant, because ultimately there is a commission that we need to approve in October. We need to make sure that the program for this new commission reflects what the commitments that Ursula von der Leyen took today, and we want to hold her accountable to that.
Do you think she can deliver on everything that she has put forward now, Natalie?
Well, first, I've known her for several years when she was a defense minister.
For which she's very criticized for.
Well, you know, it's probably one of the toughest jobs in German politics to be the defense minister. She's very pro-European. She's sincere in her commitments. Indeed, she performed very well today, whereas she might have been a little bit disappointing last week when we met with her. But everything that she committed to in writing, everything she said this morning is very close to what we campaign for in France with Renaissance and generally in Renew Europe. She's dedicated to reform the European Union. She's aware of the need.
Aligned.
Well, she's aware of the need to rush to fight against climate change. She mentioned social Europe, which is extremely important to us, so we feel comfortable voting
with
for her.
Okay, so I do want to touch on a topic that was brought up. I know this is not it was a main preoccupation of the European Union for the last, two years, Brexit. If she, about the extension, because that got a reaction inside the plenary when she said, oh, I'm open to an extension. What do you think about that idea that she's open to allowing that? Can she be the one to deliver this?
We need to check also, because it takes two to tango ultimately.
Sure.
So you need to understand also what the UK ultimately wants and what the direction will be. But for me, the most impressive sentence, or the most important sentence, was that the UK remains and will always remain a strong ally of the European Union as a whole.
So that didn't surprise you that she said, oh, we can actually extend?
No, the extension was a new thing that we had today. But for me, the most important thing is that we will look always at the United Kingdom as a strong ally.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we need to make sure that what is delivered is a workable solution for the UK and the EU as a whole.
There's still a lot of question marks on there. Let's just check in quickly again with the Hemicycle Insider taking away the vote. So we will have about 45 minutes before we find out the results to that vote. So MEPs have cast their secret ballot, so we won't know who voted what. But generally, so that's what's happening inside the Hemicycle where all the action is. Generally, do you think she's going to make it through? And how important is it that she makes it through? You know, some say she's going to barely scrape by. How important is it?
She might lose the votes from the far right. And she said that she was thankful to the far right not to vote for her, because she doesn't want to be dependent on people who want to destroy the European Union. And I fully agree with her on that. We will see the results. Our group is very committed to voting for her. What is important is also whether she will abide to the platform that we have been working together, pro-European groups in the European Parliament, with the SND, with the EPP and ourselves.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, that you do mention the far right, because, you know, she doesn't want to be seen as, you know, working with them. But at the same time, it begs the question of what kind of parliament and commission and mandate will you have if, you know, are you going to be a bit more inclusive? On that note, though, let's go to Italy. Italy now, where police raid on far-right extremist groups led to a startling discovery. Let's take a look.
It's
it's not exactly what you expect to see on the quiet streets of northern Italy. Police uncovering an arsenal of weapons, including this, a combat-ready air-to-air missile, more at home on the battlefield than the boulevard. Police raids saw 3 people arrested, including a former candidate for the neo-fascist Forza Nuova party, part of an investigation into Italian far-right involvement in the conflict in eastern Ukraine. Alongside neo-Nazi propaganda, police also uncovered assault rifles, submachine guns, bayonets, and more than 800 bullets. While the authorities believe there's no active plot to use the weapons, pressure is building on the country's populist government to do more to tackle right-wing extremism.
That was it's not directly related to the vote going here, but in a way it is too. How would the European Commission new president react to something like that if she does get the job?
I think there is something that we do not emphasize enough. This continent came together, this European Union came together because it wanted to ensure peace for all the member states to come together. And it's all about unity. And we need to have a commission that is ambitious, that is progressive, that goes into the heart of these different problems, that is closer to its
Because you were both reacting to what you were seeing on screen.
Definitely.
You were a bit shocked to see that, were you?
I've campaigned in my home country on the fight between progressives and extremists.
Right.
And this fight is not a dream. It is something that is really happening. There is a threat in Europe. And we need a president of the Commission strongly protecting European values, democracy, rule of law, pluralism. We really want her to commit herself on that.
All right, so we have a lot more coming up for you on Raw Politics tonight. Would you back Ursula von der Leyen as Commission President? So we want to know what you think. We want to hear from you. Your call is coming up at 7 p.m. CET. That's right after this program. Contact information is on your screen. So you should know the number by now. It's 00800 333 7002. And use the hashtag Raw Politics, or you can email us at that address on your screen. So our lines are opening soon after the break.
Raw Politics coming up shortly on Euronews.
This weather report is brought to you by Turkish Airlines. This weather report was brought to you by Turkish Airlines.
Welcome back to Raw Politics. We are live from the European Parliament in Strasbourg. It is buzzing here tonight. MEPs are deciding tonight, well, they've cast their ballots on whether Ursula von der Leyen should be the next Commission President. Now, you may not get a vote, but you can have a say because our phone-in show, Raw Politics, Your Call, is coming up next after this program. All right, let's check in again with our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who will be hosting Your Call tonight, and he's outside the hemicycle there. Darren, so what are we asking our viewers tonight, and also can you give us an update on what's happening inside the hemicycle?
Well, MEPs are continuing to vote, Tessa, tonight. It's a bit of a mission, isn't it? Because they've got these electronic voting systems. Normally it's pretty quick, but This has been done the old-fashioned way, in a secret ballot, it must be said, with MEPs literally having to queue up for pieces of paper and then to fill in their preference of whether they want to see Ursula von der Leyen take over this top job. I think the sense is that she has now got enough MEPs to get her over the line, that it'll be relatively close, not nearly as big as Jean-Claude Juncker got 5 years ago, but she should do it. It would be a big upset, and clearly, I think, quite reputationally damaging for the EU if she didn't. So we're going to focus on that and hopefully bring you the results in the next hour on Raw Politics Your Call. And we want your views on what you think of the process and indeed of the nominee. These are the questions. I think we've got them on a graphic that we want you to get in touch with us tonight about. We want to know, would you back Ursula von der Leyen if you, of course, had the choice? You don't, but would you if you did? Was the top job process democratic? And is von der Leyen right to allow a Brexit extension? She suggested today, of course, didn't she, that she would be open, if required, to extending Brexit beyond October 31st. You know what to do. Pick up the phone and get in touch. The number, you must know by now, it's free. No reason not to. 00800 333 3702. You can email us at rawpoll@euronews.com, and please do. We do read your emails. You can Skype us as well. Love to see your face this Tuesday evening. Or if you're on the Facebook or the Twitter, you know what to do. Use the hashtag #RawPolitics. Please get in touch. We want to hear from you on this crucial evening, an evening that could define Europe for the next 5 years, and we'll be on the air in the next couple of minutes. Back to you, Tessa.
All right, thank you for that, Darren. So those are the questions and the contact information from Darren, who will be hosting your call tonight. And joining us in the studio now, we have Svenja Han. She is a German MEP from the Renew Group. And we also have Rupert Lowe, a British MEP from the Brexit Party. I'll start with you, Svenja. Ursula von der Leyen, what do you think? She's going to make it through tonight?
I do think she's going to be voted tonight, yes. I myself supported her. This was no unconditional support, but she got it for her promise to deliver on democratic reforms, so that we're not going to be in a situation like this.
You don't think she was trying to win everybody over and probably just paying lip service to a lot of promises?
I think she made a very clear remark on which side of the house she's standing. She made a very clear remark to my colleague sitting next to me and to his group. So she delivered a pro-European speech.
And Rupert, obviously you're from the Brexit Party. What about that statement about an extension, if for the right reason, an extension?
Well, we're obviously here because we want to leave the European Union on the 31st of October, which is the current extension date. And the actual fallback position is that we will leave on that date unless there's an extension. I can quite understand why she might want to suggest that she's happy to give us an extension because, you know, we do play a big part. We're a big contributor to the EU budget. And just being in the chamber, I think we add a bit of flavour to the whole place.
Did you vote for her? Did you back her?
I haven't voted for her, no. I went into the whole process today. I was a little depressed by the lack of democracy in the way in which she was selected. It overrode the Spitzenkandidat.
I do want to talk about that because we are asking people if they think that the process was democratic. I think even MEPs from the Renew Party or actually across the board here question that.
On that as well.
Well, there you go. Because both of you will be on your call. You will be fielding and getting questions from the viewers on that.
I was quite depressed, actually.
All right.
It was a depressing process.
So just to remind you, here's how you can get in touch and talk to our two MEPs here. You can call us for free at 00800 333 7002. Use the hashtag #RawPolitics on all of social media, whatever you want. And you can also email us at rawpoll@euronews.com. And you can also look for us on Skype. I mean, that's something. We'd love to see you as well. Okay, so we do have time for our Raw Moment tonight, which comes from Ursula von der Leyen's debut, in fact, in the European Parliament, because she wasted no time in getting stuck into the Brexit party's Nigel Farage. Let's take a look at this.
What you've seen from Ursula von der Leyen today is an attempt for the European Union to take control of every single aspect of our lives. She wants to build a centralised, undemocratic, updated form of communism. She's a fanatic for building a European army, and what is there for defence can also be used for attack.
Ich muss ganz ehrlich sagen, wenn ich dem letzten Redner gerade zugehört habe, will ich noch einmal bekräftigen, wie sehr uns an unseren britischen Freunden liegt, wie intensiv wir in der Zukunft auch mit ihnen zusammenarbeiten wollen. Aber Mr. Farage, Reden wie die Ihre, auf die können wir weiß Gott verzichten.
already engaging there with Nigel Farage. What do you think? We can expect a bit more of this?
Well, well, hopefully we won't be here after the end of October, which happens to be my 62nd birthday, so that'll be a great birthday present. So we'll see. But I agree with Nigel's comments. I stood because I want.
She can hold her own.
I want a sovereign nation. I want a sovereign nation, free trade.
A quick comment from you, Svenja, before we go.
Well, I think no one that honestly wants to take over responsibility in British or European politics can support a no-deal Brexit.
All right. So again, you can join our two MEPs here on Your Call after the program. We can check in quickly with the heavy cycle before we go. That's where MEPs cast their secret ballots today. There you go. It's empty now, but the ballots have been taken and the counting will begin. So we'll find out whether Ursula von der Leyen has made it tonight. So thank you for joining us and do stay with us for Your Call.
I was born and bred in Africa. I schooled in Africa, and I've seen firsthand the level of poverty in Africa. This is the reason why our family in 2010 created the Tony Elumelu Foundation to help young African men and women to realize their life aspirations. To the young Africans, I say, the future of Africa is indeed in your hands. I look forward to welcoming our entrepreneurs in Abuja between the 26th and 27th of July this year for the annual Tony Elumelu Foundation Entrepreneurship Forum, the largest gathering of African entrepreneurs.
Crossroads of art, Azerbaijan.
Raw Politics, Your Call, coming up shortly.
Good evening and welcome to the show. Welcome to Raw Politics, Your Call. Over the next 45 minutes, we want to hear what you've got to say on some of the biggest issues facing Europe, particularly as in the next hour or so, we're going to find out here in Strasbourg who is going to replace Jean-Claude Juncker and become the next Commission President of the European Union, or indeed, potentially not. As I say, good evening. Welcome live to the European Parliament here in Strasbourg. MEPs have been voting for the last hour or so to decide whether, I should say, Ursula von der Leyen will become the next Commission President, or indeed whether they want to chuck her out and start the process all over again. The expectation, I think, amongst MEPs is that she is probably going to cross over the line, though it could be pretty close, and no one is certain that she definitely will do so. If she does, though, of course, she becomes the first female Commission President of the European Union. Could be quite a significant moment. Tonight, we want to hear your views, your thoughts on what you think of her and indeed the process that has led to her being the lead candidate, and indeed, of course, what you think her view on Brexit is. These are the questions tonight. Would you back Ursula von der Leyen? You haven't got a say in it, but if you did, would you be behind her? Was the top job process democratic? Many, of course, argue it isn't and hasn't been. But do you think it is? At the end of the day, MEPs, the people you elected, are voting on her. And is von der Leyen ready to allow a Brexit extension? She did suggest that she is willing potentially to allow that Brexit extension beyond October 31st, if required. Anyway, before we get your calls on that, let's see exactly what it's going to take for her to secure that win here tonight. Ursula von der Leyen has to get the backing of an absolute majority of MEPs. The figure etched in her mind tonight is 374, a tricky task. Her EPP will back her with its 182 votes, so she needs roughly the same again from the other parties combined. The problem is the Greens and the far left have already turned their backs, leaving Ms von der Leyen reliant on backers in the Socialist and Liberal parties. And right-wing and populist groups, a poison kiss down the line, some suggest. But it's not just about making it to 374. Symbolically, the backing of fewer than 400 MEPs could undermine her authority in office. Back in 2014, Jean-Claude Juncker got 422. So will Ursula von der Leyen be able to match her predecessor? Will she even make it across the line? And you know what to do. Our lines, email, Skypes and Twitter accounts are now open. Please get involved, get in touch. Our team standing by here in Brussels to take your calls. You know what to do. Pick up the phone. It is free. You've no reason, surely not to, on this Tuesday night. The number is 0032 22 8202 83. You can also text us on 081234. You can email us at rawpoll@euronews.com, and we're also live on Facebook and indeed on Twitter, so you can join the debate online using the hashtag #RawPolitics. Now, also getting in on the debate is Fenja Hahn, who is a German MEP with the Renew Group, and Rupert Lowe, who is a British MEP with the Brexit Party. We're going to get in their views and indeed your views in a couple of minutes' time. But before that, let's go over to Isabel, who is just on the road in Lyon at Euronews headquarters for the very latest news this hour. Good evening, Isabel.
Good evening, Darren, and these are our top stories. And as you've been hearing from our Raw Politics team, and indeed Darren, the European Commission presidency is on the line in Strasbourg. MEPs are now voting on the European Council's nominee for the top job, German Defence Minister Ursula von der Leyen. Results are expected shortly. Well, Mrs von der Leyen will need at least 374 votes to become the Commission's first female president. But some MEPs are opposing her bid because she is not one of the candidates put forward by the Parliament's major groups. Now, ahead of the make or break vote, von der Leyen promised a Green Deal for Europe within her first 100 days in office and called on the fragmented Parliament to rally behind her. Now, Turkey says it intends to send a fourth ship to the eastern Mediterranean as part of its plans to continue drilling for oil and gas off the coast of Cyprus. The move comes in defiance of EU sanctions that will slash funding for Ankara. The dispute over drilling stems from overlapping claims to regional waters linked to the 45-year-old split of the island between Greek and Turkish Cypriots. And authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo say the first man infected with Ebola in the city of Goma has died. The patient was a priest who became infected in one of the epicenters of the outbreak before taking a bus to the city. Ebola has already killed close to 1,700 people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And those are our top stories. Now back over to Darren and a very exciting night as we find out if Ursula von der Leyen is indeed confirmed as European Commission President.
Indeed, thank you very much, Isabel. Full news bulletin, of course, coming up at the top of the hour, 8 o'clock. CEST time. We were hoping potentially to get the result during this programme, though I'm told by my two esteemed MEP guests that that is unlikely at this stage. But let's go into the chamber, into the Parliament. It's pretty empty at the moment, as we think most, in fact, it's incredibly empty at the moment, where we think most MEPs have probably now voted. But, of course, it all has to be counted by hand, which will take a while. But also, we must emphasise that even though there are 751 MEPs, I think there are only 747 who've been allowed to take their seats, not least of all because of the Catalans. And in addition to that, actually, it's only when she gets an absolute majority that she wins. So we keep mentioning this 374 figure, and that is true if everyone votes. At the moment, the expectation is that there will be abstentions. In fact, we don't think everyone is there. So that figure might lower, but it doesn't necessarily mean just because she doesn't get to 374 that she doesn't win. She just needs an absolute majority. Anyway, we'll keep you posted on what's happening in there. But first of all, let's bring our two guests in. First of all, what did you make of what she had to say this morning? Because this was a kind of full, big, final pitch to you guys. Did she win you over?
Who of us do you want to start?
Whoever wants to go.
Well, I think she gave the speech of her life this morning, and I think she convinced many MEPs on the spot. I think this was not an easy decision for any of us, especially for my group, as we've been very much working in favor of the idea of Spitzenkandidat. But the problem we saw that there was a broad interpretation of what Spitzenkandidat process is and what the regulation in the treaty means, that the council proposes someone taking the result of the election into account. For the Conservative, it meant they're the largest party, so it must be a Conservative candidate. For others, it meant a candidate that can get a majority in the parliament. So this process has shown that we need a reform, that we need it written down in paper, that we need a crystal clear framework and not a gentleman's agreement if we want to have Spitzenkandidat process in the future.
I can do you in a second, Rob. But how can that happen with someone who essentially has never been involved in the Brussels process before, actually has been brought in from the outside? Isn't it slightly ironic that she's now saying, well, I'm actually going to give this place more powers and you more powers, even though I've been foisted upon you?
This was really not an easy decision for me. I decided to support her. It was not unconditional support. I supported her because of the promise she made to deliver on democratic reform, to create a conference for the future of Europe that shall work out such democratic reforms, such as transnational list, as a written down Spitzenkandidat principle. So it's more than just a gentleman's agreement, and especially the right for legislative initiative right for the parliament. So I decided to take this now. This, for me, is a short-term backlash for European democracy in order to gain a long-term win with reforms for European democracy.
Okay, Terence Murphy tweeting in saying, I would back Ursula and are happy with the democratic selection process. I would most definitely support a Brexit extension, which might eventually mean that Brexit goes away. We're going to come on to that in a second with Rupert, but I think we've got Paul joining us from Poland via Skype. Good evening, Paul. How are you? What do you think? Are you convinced by Ursula von der Leyen? Do you think she should become the Commission President tonight?
I need to check. Is my mic working?
It is. We can hear you loud and clear. Don't worry.
Okay, great. So, sorry, what did you say? Sorry, say that again.
I was just asking whether you back Ursula von der Leyen, whether you think she'd be a good next Commission president or not.
Well, she's got the pedigree, certainly. She's. I've been watching today, Euronews and on France 24 as well. Actually, there's a lot of kind of positive kind of stories about her past, about where she was born, who her parents were. She seems to have an authentic kind of European and EU pedigree.
But many people would point out she's not being necessarily the best defence minister in Germany. She's not very well known, and most of us have not had a say on whether she gets this job or not.
Well, this has given me something to think about. I think what it's said to me is that the EU is still in a process of gestating. I don't think it's properly born yet. This process of her nomination and not an appointment seems to have been something of a formality. I'm really puzzled by this secret ballot. Why does it need to be secret? Because as an ordinary person, that just kind of makes you suspicious, especially with how it came about. With the abandonment of the Spitzenkandidat process.
So yeah, well, I'm going to just hold on a second, Paul, because I'll put that actually. Rupert, I assume you're equally perplexed about why this is a secret ballot. But of course, British MPs, when they were choosing who the next Conservative leader should be, also voted in secret.
Well, first of all, I didn't vote for Ursula von der Leyen, so I came into today's speeches with an open mind. I was very depressed about the way in which she appeared from nowhere. As you quite rightly say, a quick look at her CV would suggest that she wasn't the right person for the job. She was shoehorned in at the last minute. The Spitzenkandidaten process was completely overridden. And all I listened to this morning was what I call verbal baby food. It was hollow promises. And what deals she's done, I don't know. Whether she ends up being elected, I don't know. But on the basis of what I heard, I couldn't possibly vote for her. So that's...
Do you at least recognise that, I mean, this... OK, so she's been nominated by 28 heads of state who are all democratically elected, or heads of government, and she's now been confirmed, or not, by 751 directly elected MEPs.
Well, we'll find out in a minute.
You recognise that that's a democratic process?
It's not a democratic process. The process has been far from democratic. In fact, I came here, I stood for the Brexit Party because our democracy was ignoring the vote of the British people, and 3 years on since we had our June referendum, and nothing had happened. And the sort of vote we got showed the depth of feeling in the UK, and these people care about their democracy, and they weren't being delivered democracy. To come here 2 weeks ago and see the process by which Ursula von der Leyen appeared was depressing in itself, and then to see the way in which the whole place is operated today is even more depressing. So for me, I haven't voted for her, and it's simply reconfirmed or doubly reconfirmed the fact that we will be better as a sovereign nation, our sovereign nation with our own currency and our own trade arrangements.
I'm sorry, this is dangerously populistic what they're saying there. It was a process which is in line with the treaties. Spitzenkandidat was a gentleman's agreement, and that is the problem. We need reforms.
But why a secret ballot tonight? That was a fair question from Paul there. Why are you guys voting in secret?
It's a very good question.
I think that is the default option for any election of person. That's basically in most of parliaments, in most institutions, that it is a secret ballot.
OK. Are you convinced by that? Paul, thank you very much, by the way, for calling in. We want your views on that. We've got you calling in, indeed. I'm going to take your calls. You know what the number is. It's 0032 22830283. Or, indeed, you can text us on 081 234. We want to know what your views are on Ursula von der Leyen. Do you think she's good for the job? Do you think the process was democratic? And also, are you looking forward to a Brexit extension, essentially? Pick up the phone, get in touch. We'll be speaking to you and to them in about a minute or so.
Raw Politics, Your Call, coming up shortly.
Welcome back to Raw Politics, Your Call. We're live here in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, and I think we can take you yet again, just briefly, inside the chamber, the hemicycle here, which is actually just right behind me, where, as you can see, there's not many MEPs in there at the moment, but they have been voting over the last hour or so to decide whether Ursula von der Leyen, the current and outgoing German defence minister, should become the next Commission President, the first female Commission President. We are expecting a result, hopefully in the next hour or so, and we'll bring we'll bring you that when we get it. Anyway, let's get back to tonight's questions about Ursula von der Leyen and whether you think she would be a good Commission President. Also asking you whether she was right to allow a Brexit extension or suggest that she would be open to that. But also we want to know, was the top job process democratic? And on that note, let's bring in Roy, who joins us on the phone from the Netherlands. Good evening, Roy. What do you reckon? Do you think this process that might lead to Ursula von der Leyen becoming the Commission President was democratic?
Good evening, Darren. Yes and no. The process is a product of the structure of the European Union. And in my opinion, it's reflective also of the fact that there's much controversy throughout the European Union on the structure, and she's promising to change it. She's promising to change the structure so that it becomes more democratic, which is a very positive attribute for her to pursue.
What do you make of her personally, though? Are you a fan? Have you been won over by her? Did you know her? Have you even heard of her before that EU Council summit, 2 weeks ago?
Well, I believe that she's a relative politic unknown outside of Germany, and she does present herself well. She is a professional, and I do believe that there would be advantages, particularly in the fact that she would be the first woman commissioner, and also by the fact that she comes from a stable background, which is going to be enhancing the commission.
And just also, if she doesn't get elected tonight or confirmed, where do you think that leaves the European Union? Many would say badly damaged and in chaos. Would you agree?
Well, it's a statement of where the European Union is in the current state of affairs, because there's controversy throughout Europe and in every single European land about the structure of the European government, and it desperately needs to implement change to provide a more democratic process. As individuals in the EU, people don't have direct representation, and I think that's a serious flaw in the European government.
A serious flaw in the European government. Thank you very much indeed, Roy, from calling in. It is a serious flaw, isn't it?
Pardon?
It's a serious flaw, isn't it?
Well, it is foreseen in the treaties a way what will be the process if she not be elected tonight. The council has 1 more month to come forward with another candidate, or maybe her again, that's possible as well. But then it would be really urgent to consult with the parliament and to find a common way forward. So I don't think it's a crisis. It is a way foreseen in the treaties, but that was one of the reasons I supported her tonight as well. I don't think we're in a situation where we should afford having the European Commission in kind of like a loophole hanging, especially with a pending Brexit coming up.
We think that bell means that in about 10 minutes' time, we probably will be getting a result, which will bring you. So if you're sitting comfortably, get to the edge of your sofa, because it could be a very close vote, it could be a tense vote, it certainly could be an historic vote, and we'll bring you that on Euronews. So we reckon we're probably going to get a result from inside the European Parliament on whether Ursula von der Leyen will become the next Commission President in the next 10 minutes or so. Of course, we'll bring it to you live. Rupert, it's all too easy to bash this process, and people would say Europe is not perfect, and no one, I don't think, even the biggest Europhile would argue it is. Who would say this is a process, and that actually, you know what, the European Parliament first got elected in 1979. It's now trying to assert its authority again to take it on to the next level. Ursula von der Leyen saying that it can now potentially initiate legislation. Don't you recognise that even though you don't like the place, that actually it is making progress to becoming more democratic?
No, I think it's just more of the same, actually. I think she's a fully committed federal European. She wants a European army. She wants all the trappings of a nation state. And, you know, what's made Europe great in the past has been it's the competition between the nation states. And I think, for me, the reason we want our sovereignty back, it doesn't have anything to do with trade. You can have a sovereign nation, and sovereign nations trade freely with each other. You don't have to surrender your sovereignty in order to trade with people. And this is where people get confused. So for me, it's been a deeply undemocratic process, and nothing will change my view on that. Europe's had plenty of time to adapt and do this better. We had the Spitzenkandidaten process that was completely overridden. So they had a process, and that process wasn't followed. So for me, I want nation states, I want full cooperation in Europe, and I want free trade. So that for me is the recipe to make Europe great, not some unaccountable superstate. In an era when the digital revolution is allowing people more independence, more freedom, more individuality, why do we want top-down central planning? Central planning doesn't work. Look at the USSR, look at Venezuela, it just doesn't work.
Robert Sloan saying that he thinks it would be ridiculous if Parliament were to vote in favour of von der Leyen today, despite previous criticisms of the undemocratic way in which it was initiated. The European Parliament should maintain the Spitzencandidate process. Neil Jones tweeting in saying, no, today's vote is not democratic. He says, I would have voted against the candidate who's been promoted out of the German government, where she's a failed defence minister. Also goes on to say, no more Brexit extensions. Let's bring in Rudy, who is on the line indeed from Strasbourg, where we are. Good evening, Rudy. What do you think? Are you a fan of Ursula von der Leyen? Would you have voted for her if you could have done?
Good evening. I would not say I'm a fan of her, no. As you might hear from my accent, I hope not too much. I'm also German originally, and what I've seen from her in the Ministry of Defense, and that's due to my young age, pretty much the only office I've seen her in, is pretty unconvincing. And I know Mrs. Hahn and her party, among others, are still investigating her in German Parliament. So that's not very convincing, and I would not consider myself a fan. But when I listened to her over the last few days and read some of her old quotes, it really appeared to me like she was not just some bureaucrat or anything, but someone who was a convinced European, like really down to her heart. And for some reason, I believe she can do a lot better as EU Commission President than as Minister of Defense. And if I may add one more comment, I was actually pretty shocked to hear that Mr. Farage thinks she'll bring communism to Europe. Like, my parents grew up in Eastern Germany. Mr. Lowe, and politics aside, I don't understand how you could possibly support such a statement. So, yeah, that's basically my opinion on it. I think she would do well, and I would back her, yeah.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Rudy, for joining us there. I think we've also got Frank on the line from London. Oh, no, we're not going to go to Frank. We are going to go inside the Parliament, actually, because MEPs are starting to assemble, as you can see there, waiting that result. As I say, we are probably going to get one in the next 5 or 6 minutes, round up about 7:30. Though there are rumours, and I will say only rumours at this stage, that it looks like she has won. Suggestions, I have to say this is unconfirmed, we're going to get the results. Suggestion is that she may have won by 383 votes. So she got over that 374 line, but as I say, unconfirmed, but it looks like she has managed to get over the line. We're going to get the full results inside this Parliament in a couple of minutes' time. Let's bring in Nick, who's on the line from London. Good evening. Oh, he's in the line from Athens, actually, much further away. Good evening, Nick, in Athens. What do you...
Darren.
What do you reckon about tonight? It looks like she's won. Are you happy with that result?
So basically, we have to be pragmatic in this type of procedure. She was not a spitting candidate, which is really we can't say that that's democratic, because it's kind of disrespectful towards the European Parliament and the European Parliament election institution.
We've got something on the line. We can just close down that line. I don't know whether everyone can hear it or not. Not entirely sure what's happening, but the joys of telephones, even here in Europe. Let's just get reaction quickly to that news that it sounds like she has won 383, we reckon. She's won. What do you think? What difference will she make, do you reckon, particularly when it comes to Brexit?
Well, we don't know if she's won yet, but she's obviously won by less than Jean-Claude Juncker. So we have got a bit of democratic.
Well, we don't know how many people voted.
We're potentially won by less, but we've got a bit of democratic creep. So I mean, on balance, it's a pity, because it's an opportunity for the elected Parliament to actually flex their muscles a little bit, which they've chosen not to take. And I don't know what deals have been done in the smoke-filled rooms that since her speech this morning. There were people who gave speeches. They weren't necessarily supportive, but they said that under the right conditions they might support her. So maybe she's facilitated those conditions. But we'll see.
OK, just very quickly.
If it's that close, it really shows she is a compromise candidate, and we were going to hold her accountable to the promises she made in case she gets elected. OK, well, I'd say unofficial, but unofficially, at the moment, it looks like she is over the line. We're going to get the actual results in the next couple of minutes from live inside the European Parliament here in Strasbourg. We're going to take another quick commercial break. We'll be back after that with the live results of who will be, whether she will be, the next Commission President.
Crossroads of art, Azerbaijan.
Raw Politics, your call, coming up shortly.
Financial center. But what about high tech? Global tech firms based here are assisting companies across the greater Bay Area and beyond. And it's one example of how this city is a magnet for investment combined with a lifestyle that many from around the world can call home. Join us as we look into how people in high tech work and play in Hong Kong. In Spotlight this week on Euronews and euronews.com.
Welcome back to Raw Politics. You'll recall quite a frenetic evening, it must be said, inside the European Parliament here in Strasbourg. Let's take you inside the actual chamber, the hemicycle, where MEPs are gathering to await that result. We're going to hear it from David Sassoli, the new Parliament President. He is going to announce in the next couple of minutes whether the current and outgoing German Defence Minister, Ursula von der Leyen, someone who potentially could become the next female Commission President, whether she is going to get that job or not. Now, according to our sources here, unconfirmed, but we do reckon she has managed to get over the line. It looks like she's got 383 in terms of actual numbers of MEPs. We don't know how many has voted, so it's difficult to compare where she is with, let's say, other Commission presidents, but that is certainly well short in terms of absolute numbers that, for example, Jean-Claude Juncker got 5 years ago. So let's wait and see what happens. We're going to get the results, as I say, in the next couple of minutes, but it does look like the European Union is about, in some ways, to have an historic moment. Its first female Commission President, and that is something she has focused on quite a lot today. How important is that?
To me, it is actually not the reason I supported her, but it is a very important symbol, and it's a very clear signal. I really liked her part of the speech where she said very clearly her commission will be 50% female commissioners, and I think it is more than about time that we have gender equality in the European institutions.
You must at least. I know there's always, and yeah, here she is. She is now walking into the European Parliament. Ursula von der Leyen, as I say, someone we now expect in the next couple of minutes to be confirmed as the next Commission President. As I say, she's been a German Defence Minister, I think, since 2014, I think. Mother of 7, someone who is fluent in certainly German and English and seems to speak French as well, very well. She today made a speech trying to woo over all those MEPs who have been voting for the last couple of hours, talking in very broad terms of wide-ranging everything from climate change through to migration. But I think let's try and listen in now to David Sassoli, the EU Parliament President, who's just about to announce the result. Looking quite nervous, isn't she, Ursula von der Leyen? Let's have a listen in to the European Parliament.
Results of the vote. The number of votes, 733. And majority of members that make up the Parliament, 374. Votes in favour, 383.
Voti contrari,
Votes against, 327.
Astensioni 22, schede nulle 1.
In blank vote. And on the basis of these votes, the candidate for the President of the Commission is proposed by the Council and has been elected by the European Parliament. And I would like to congratulate Ms. Ursula von der Leyen for her election. And I wish her all the very best for her mandate. And in line with Article 124, Para 3 of the Rules of Procedure, I will inform the Council and I will invite them for the Commission President to propose the various Commissioner positions, and there will be a letter informing them of the Parliament's decision.
so you're going to have to tell me what you want me to do.
And I will give it to the president who is here.
So there we go, Ursula von der Leyen receiving, I'm not entirely sure what is in that document, but it looks quite official, and she is now officially going to be the next EU Commission President. But my word, was it close. She got 383 votes, but wins by just 9 votes. No wonder she was looking nervous just before the announcement. Must be said, we got the figures perfectly right here on Euronews. Let's again listen into what David Sassoli is saying, the Parliament President.
The commissioners, the designate commissioners, and you know that we will be very scrupulous in the work that we do here in the Parliament. And you mentioned topics today here in plenary, and we look forward to getting into those in more detail and speaking to the members of the college with those. And then the competent committees will be dealing this. The next few years are going to be very important years, important for the future of the European Union, and we will be successful if there is close cooperation between the European institutions. I will give you the floor so that you can speak to the Assembly. You have the floor, Madam.
Mr. President, and honourable members of this Parliament, I feel so honoured and I'm overwhelmed, and I thank you for the trust you placed in me. The trust you placed in me is confidence you placed in Europe. Your confidence in a united and a strong Europe, from east to west, from south to north. Your confidence in a Europe that is ready to fight for the future, rather than fighting against each other. Your confidence in a Europe that will take the big challenges of our times together. The task ahead of us humbles me. It's a big responsibility, and my work starts now. I thank President Sassoli. I thank all the group leaders. I thank all the members of Parliament who decided to vote for me today. But my message to all of you is, let us work together constructively, because the endeavour is a united, a strong Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. von der Leyen. And now I will hand over letters to the Council.
And so there we go. We heard just there from Ursula von der Leyen, becomes the first female Commission President. As I say, only just, though, 9 votes in it, which is by far the smallest majority or vote win that any EU Commission President has had since at least the Lisbon Treaty back in 2009. Reaction already coming in via Twitter. Franz Timmermans of the Socialists and Democrats saying, congratulations, today you've won a democratic mandate from the European Parliament to deliver a green and social programme which you presented this morning. Margrethe Vestager says, first female President of the Commission, congratulations, looking so much forward to work with you. It was close. She's there. She's over the line. What difference do you honestly think she will make from the Jean-Claude Juncker Commission? Because actually, when you listen to a speech today, it is a speech that almost he could have delivered.
I honestly think she was more respectful towards the parliament than Jean-Claude Juncker had been in the past in a lot of his speeches. I mean, it was a very, very close majority she gained, and this is really clear. She is a compromise candidate, and we as a parliament will hold her accountable for the promises she made from day one on. And she now has to work hard. And I think she's not only owning the council that she's in this position now, but she owns the parliament, who very, very thinly supported her. So there are high expectations in her.
Does that matter? Does that matter that it's only 9?
I think it absolutely matters, because she sees there are people that are critical towards her, and there are many people that supported her out of pragmatic reasons and not because they're her biggest fans. I supported her out of pragmatic reasons, and I now want to see her to deliver on the promises she made, especially on the promises for the reform of the European Union for democratic reforms.
Now, one of the things she did bring up in that speech today, and one of the things that potentially you're going to have to deal with, though she is only due to take over this job, must be said, on November 1st, and Britain is due to leave the European Union on October 31st, but she would clearly now play a role in Brexit, if not the withdrawal, potentially the future relationship in some form. Do you think she's going to be a different kind of negotiator than Jean-Claude Juncker, a different kind of figure that Britain will have to deal with?
Well, we'll find out, obviously, when our own Prime Minister, it will be, is chosen by the Conservative Party. We'll find out who she'll be talking to. The Brexit Party has actually moved a suggestion that the European Union starts free trade talks with the UK now. There is no reason why we shouldn't have a free trade agreement between the two countries. We have very established trade links. We have equivalents in a lot of goods and products.
There she is, shaking hands with Silvio Berlusconi, of course, the former Italian Prime Minister. Sorry to interrupt there, Rupert.
That's okay.
Antonio Tajani, who, of course, up until a couple of weeks ago, was the Parliament President. Both of those politicians inside the EPP, so one would have assumed did vote for her. And just to bring you some figures that we've got in, just to confirm then, 383 out of 733 votes that were cast, 327 against. That means that 51% of MEPs, all the total that could have voted for. It was 52% of those that did decide to vote. And people are speculating that apparently means she probably relied upon the Law and Justice Party in Poland, who announced just before the vote that they would back her. Sorry, Robert, you were saying that we're going to have to wait and see.
Well, I was actually saying that in the interests of both us, when we do Brexit, and the European Union, all the peoples in Europe, what we should be doing is reaching a free trade agreement. That is, as I said to you, it's got no link. Free trade has no link with sovereignty. So therefore, we should be able to trade freely and responsibly, and responsible governments would get together and would reach a free trade agreement. That is what is in the interests of Europe.
Well, I think a responsible government and a responsible parliament would now find a way forward out of this deadlock that we see right now in British politics. And really, no one that can want to take over responsibility in politics, maybe in Great Britain or in the European Union, can be in favour of a no-deal Brexit. And Mrs von der Leyen said very clearly, and I support her in that, there is a deal on the table, and I believe there should indeed be a referendum where the British people could vote, is this the deal they want? Do they want a no-deal Brexit, or do they want to stay? And I believe this is the way forward. And if there's for that needed an extension, yes, but not for the Parliament and the government still staying.
No, we had a once-in-a-lifetime referendum, and the British people made a decision. So
it was already twice referendum on being in, so it's not really once in a lifetime.
Have another referendum. That would be a catastrophe for democracy.
Let's not end on Brexit. Let's just end on this woman here, Ursula von der Leyen, who's going to become the next Commission President. Just your final thoughts on what's happened. A very narrow vote, but she's got the job. What do you think? How do you think it's going to play out?
Well, I think there's been a bit of democratic creep, as I said. Sadly, not quite enough for the elected body to send a real message. But look, I wish her well. She's got 5 years. It's great that she's a lady. I think that's fantastic. I have no problem with that at all. We've had some great prime ministers who are ladies, like Margaret Thatcher. So I wish her well. But you know, it's a message, as you say. to the Commission?
Just very, very quickly.
She's in a very historic position as the first woman and as a president that so narrowly got elected. And as a member of parliament, I will hold her accountable to her promises.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us both tonight. Thank you indeed also for calling in and texting in. Much appreciated. A pretty historic night tonight. We're going to leave on those images inside the European Parliament where Ursula von der Leyen is going to become the next Commission President, the first female Commission President, continuing coverage throughout the night here on Euronews. For us, for now though, goodbye.
Everybody we ever bring here that sees our ranch or any part of Wyoming is just in awe of how cool it is. I have a band called the Younger Brothers Band. We just relate stuff about mountains and just cowboy lifestyle. You can't really explain it or put it on paper. Wyoming just something you have to come out and experience for yourself. It's like nowhere else. I'll live here forever.
The Silkway Rally is over and 5,000 kilometres of tracks are behind us, from Irkutsk and Lake Baikal across Mongolia and China. Motorcyclists are featured on the Silkway for the first time this year. 24 riders, including 4 female racers, challenged the unknown. The most successful was Great Britain's Sam Sunderland, who won his first White Tiger. In the quads, the main struggle unfolded between the Polish leader Rafał Sonik and Alexander Maximov from Russia. Experience won, the prize goes to Sonic. The fastest in cars was the inimitable Nasser Al-Attiyah. The Qatari has won all the selective sections, setting an unprecedented record. No racer before had won a rally with such superiority. The second is China's Han Wei, and third is Jérôme Pélissier from France. In the SSVs, the duo of Sergei Karyakin and Anton Vlasiuk posted the best time. Just a couple of years ago, Karyakin moved from a quad to an SSV and almost immediately achieved another big success. In the trucks, the crew of Russia's Anton Shubalov was absolutely the fastest, and the prize podium is once again painted Kamaz blue, as the Kamaz Master Team took the top 3 places in this year's Silkway Rally.
Portugal has played host to one of the best urban festivals in the world. Across 7 stages and 3 days, Nossa Live Festival in Algés near Lisbon offered more than 100 performances with music of all genres, bringing people together from across the globe.
It's the second time I've come here. It's great. It has a great vibe. We've a 3-day ticket.
The Cure headlined the first day, playing the biggest hits from their 40-year-long career, just before Mogwai also played on the main stage. Almost celebrating a quarter of a century, the Scots had a memorable show after telling Euronews what they thought about Brexit.
It's a disaster. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's
I don't know how a small bunch of people, stupid people, have had so much say in it. And it's difficult for me because I live in Germany, and I have to. It's even more difficult for me to sort of get a residency there. So everything's become sort of like this, you know, it's flipped.
From Brazil, Emma Cedar made the clubbing stage vibrate. Speaking to Euronews, the Brazilian rapper highlighted the urgency of denouncing racial problems and social inequalities.
We're playing with a powder keg when we do what we did in the last election, handing over the presidency of the Republic to a completely irresponsible person. This is the issue. So I think it's urgent to talk about these inequalities so that we can evolve into a better society.
On the second day, gossip and Vampire Weekend were the main stage highlights. On the Sagres stage, Cut Copy kept everyone dancing, and after a career spanning decades, 71-year-old Grace Jones made quite an appearance.